couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster the breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. Easiest way, if you want to say something to me, honestly, is to put a comment on YouTube videos. I see that the fastest. You can also go to lenanazari.com if you want to see, cons I'm going to be at, when my books are coming out, all that stuff. Or you can just follow me, The Beautiful Dead Podcast, on Instagram. I think that's probably where I'm the most active, if I want to be honest. Oh, we got a crying puppy. Which means I have to go get her a treat, or else she will cry the entire video. And I feel like she knows what she's doing. I think she's blackmailing me, because she was quiet until the moment I hit record. So she knows if she cries, I will get her a treat. And then she will be quiet the whole video. So okay, let's give her her treat. Also, she's not a puppy. She's 8 years old. So she knows exactly what she is doing. Okay, so we're doing something a little bit different for the next couple weeks. Somebody made a comment on my Nosferatu video that there was a hum that was bothering them. And I think what they're hearing is the fan or my PC running. So unfortunately, my PC is how I record the podcast audio. And so I normally do it simultaneously, but for the next couple weeks, I'm going to record the podcast, the audio separately. That's already done. The PC is shut down. So hopefully you're not hearing the hum. If anyone noticed it in previous videos and doesn't notice it now, please let me know if I figured out what she was talking about. But it also means we have to go back to paper like we used to do, because I used to just read it off of my PC. So my script is now on paper like we used to do back in the day. So we're going back to doing the paper thing. So it means that I'm going to be looking down a little bit, but we'll see. You guys let me know if there's a difference, if you like this better, if you hate it, if it makes no difference to you at all. Let me know. All right. So we just got done talking about From Dusk Till Dawn, From Dusk Till Dawn 2, Dusk Till Dawn 3, which was a lot of fun. We all had a lot of fun. But I decided that I would go back to hitting up this DVD wall that is above me right now. And in it, I have these 4 favorite Draculas. And of course, we did Hammer Month, but I didn't get to do all of the Hammer films. There's way, way too many. So we're going to do one I haven't done, which is Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. And I had not seen this one. And I do have to say, it was a good time. And when I was looking up trivia, I found out this was Hammer Films' most profitable movie. So good for you, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. And you know how much I love Christopher Lee doing Dracula, so I decided we would go ahead and watch this one. And it was a good time. You guys know this. I don't do vampire crossovers when we do Hammer films because we would be here all day. There's no point. But this one does have Christopher Lee. Peter Cushing is not in this one. We have no Van Helsing character, so it's a little bit different. But why don't we go along for this ride? If you've never watched this YouTube video, spoiler alerts, I do ruin everything. We talk about the movie from the beginning to the end. I'm going to tell you who gets staked, who gets turned, who gets sexy time with Dracula, all that good stuff. So let's talk about it. Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. We open on a church in 1905, and there's a young man who's sweeping up. He's in a really good mood, and he runs over to pull the bell for the town, and he lets go of the rope, revealing blood on his hand. He climbs the stairs to go see what's bleeding. We cut outside to a priest who is walking towards the church. He hears the man screaming inside and runs to enter the church, and he also goes up to the tower to see what's bleeding. And this time we do follow him. The bell has blood on it. A shoe falls from inside the bell, and a dead woman falls out, and she has bite marks on her neck. So we know that Dracula has 2 sharp canines. The priest says, "When will we be free from this evil?" Then we cut to a window. We see that it's snowing, and then we see that it's warm weather. So I think it's supposed to indicate a passage of time, but at this point in time, it didn't indicate how much. Now we see another priest, and he is driving a carriage, and we get a voiceover. It's been a year since Dracula was stopped, so obviously that passage of time was a year. And the man is Monsignor Miller, who is visiting the village that Dracula had been terrorizing. So now we're back at the church. The priest and young man from the beginning are performing some kind of Catholic ritual to an empty church. Now, I am not Catholic. I don't know anything about Catholicism, so I wasn't sure what was going on. The Monsignor arrives to the church and finds the boy is alone and he's unable to speak. So Miller asks, "Where is your priest?" And the boy leads him to the local tavern where the priest is drinking. Miller is like, "Why is your church empty?" The local barkeep explains. He says, "I think you know why it's empty." And Miller says, "Wasn't the evil thing destroyed 12 months ago?" And the local says, "Yes, but the shadow of his castle still casts on the church, so no one will go there." Miller says, "Dracula's dead, so why do you still fear him?" And then he insists that the bar empty out so he can talk to his priest alone, and they do that. The priest explains you can still feel his evil presence, so nobody will go there. And so Miller says to the priest, "That's it. We're going at dawn. We're hiking to the castle, and I'm going to show you that there is nothing to be afraid of." So the next morning, they hike up this mountain, and Miller has this big cross on his back. Now, the priest looks like he is struggling. He does not look so good, but Miller seems to be fine. Guess he's a hiker. So at this point, I was like, I got to look up this priest's name because I can't keep calling him priest. But on IMDb, he is credited as priest. So I will just keep calling him priest. Anywho, they reach the castle. They're at the base of the mountain that the castle is on. And priest says, "I can't go on. It's going to be dark soon. I can't do this." So clearly they've been hiking all day because they left at dawn. And Miller says, "Stay here. I'll go." And so the priest stays. Miller reaches the front door of the castle just as the sun is setting. And he performs an exorcism. As the sun sets in front of Dracula's castle, this man, with his mouth, starts speaking Latin. He's performing an exorcism. Don't speak Latin aloud in a horror situation, especially when you're in front of Dracula's castle. That just feels so dumb. So a storm starts roiling in, and lightning starts to fill the sky. The priest freaks out, and so he's running. And while he runs, he trips and he falls down this valley, down a bunch of rocks, and at the bottom is ice, and he cracks the ice, and we see that Dracula is under the ice. He hits his head as he's rolling down the mountain, cracks the ice open, and blood from his head drips into Dracula's mouth, which you guys know I love the trope of accidentally bleeding into Dracula's mouth, and that's what wakes him up. We see that in Dracula 2000, and you guys know how much I love that one. So Miller is done, and he has jammed that big cross that he was carrying on the front of Dracula's castle so that Dracula can't enter the castle. And so now he's looking for priest, and he can't find him anywhere. He just finds his flask. Meanwhile, we see the priest coming too, and Dracula's standing there. And let me tell you something. Christopher Lee looks so good in this movie. This was definitely his prime. I keep feeling a hair. I can't find it. We see that Dracula casts a reflection in the water, and he has bloodshot eyes. And then it cuts to Miller, who is now back at the pub. He's walked all the way back. The wind is howling outside, and he tells the evils, he tells the locals, the evil is destroyed forever. Don't worry. The door of the castle is sealed with a cross, and the locals are thanking him and praising him. Nope. You fucked up. You just messed up so bad. So Miller says, "Well, where's the priest?" And the locals say he came, but he wanted to be alone, so he went off by himself. So Miller says, "All right, well, when you see him, tell him everything I've done. Tell him Godspeed. I'm going home." Meanwhile, Dracula sees the cross on his castle door, and he is pissed. And the priest is with him now. So we're guessing the priest is like his Renfield character. And he tells Dracula Monsignor Miller did it. So it's the next day. Miller arrives back to his hometown of Canonsburg, and he heads into his house, and we meet Anna, who kind of seems like the housekeeper, and she takes off his shoes and puts his slippers on, and she reminds him that there's a dinner party that night for Maria. And we learn that he has provided her a good education and a good home, and then he mentions his brother, so I'm thinking that's his niece, and probably the brother has passed away. And I'm like, oh, and I bet Maria's going to be super hot and exactly Dracula's type. So now we're back with Dracula. They're in a cemetery. And Dracula's standing by a carriage. And he's watching this priest like try and drag this coffin over to him, which I thought was hysterical because Dracula's very strong and would have no problem just grabbing a coffin. But he's making this poor priest do it. And the priest drags it over, and then he tips it, and he like flips this corpse out and then puts the coffin in the back of the carriage for Dracula. I'm like, that's dark. Now we're back in Canonsburg, and they're readying the house for the party, and Anna tells Miller that Maria is going to bring a boy that night, and the boy works at the local bakery, and even though he works at the bakery now, he's actually going to go to med school, and he's very smart, and he's a good boy. So now we meet this boy. His name is Paul, who is shirtless and sweaty and quite confident. And he tells his boss, Max, that he's going to meet Maria's mother tonight. And Max says, look at the mother and you'll see your future. The pretty girl you have now will eventually be her mother. We realize now that the bakery is actually at the basement level of the local pub. So they walk upstairs to the pub. It's rowdy. There's a bunch of young boys drinking and singing. And to my young drinkers out there, have you guys ever broken out into like singing songs, like drinking songs? I have never seen this happen other than karaoke. They're all like singing these drinking songs. And we meet the bar wench Xena, who is ample of bosom and quite beloved by the locals. She gets lots of attention, but she wants Paul, and Paul wants Maria. And so Paul shows up. He is in a nice suit, and he has flowers. And they talk him into doing this like drinking game. And Maria arrives just in time to see Paul get beer spilled all over his suit. And she's very, very upset because he's about to go meet her mother. They run from the pub, and Paul steals a kiss, which just makes her forget everything. She's not mad anymore. At the party, Maria greets her uncle, Miller, who she didn't know was home. We see that Anna is Maria's mother. So Anna is Miller's dead brother's wife, and Maria is his niece. Paul doesn't make a good first impression because they're late and he smells like beer, but they laugh it off and everybody's having a good time. Then we cut to Dracula, who's driving his horses. He is driving those horses like crazy, but I think it's because he's trying to get to Canonsburg before the sun sets. So we're gonna give him some grace right now. At the dinner party, Paul is being grilled about his beliefs, and he admits he doesn't go to church and that he's an atheist. And this is where Miller is like, done. He's done. He asks Paul to leave. He is not happy. This is the point where I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is how it's going to go. Xena is going to be turned into a vampire bride. Maria will get Dracula's attention, but she won't get fully turned because she'll get saved by Paul, who will finally prove himself to the Monsignor. And I was thinking, I really hope this is not one of those things where he finds faith because of fighting Dracula. I was really hoping that's not where this was headed. All right, so Dracula's in town. Paul returns to the pub, which is closed, but Xena lets him come in and start drinking because obviously he's upset. The dinner didn't go well, which she is pleased about. And now Maria is in bed, and she has a doll with her in bed, even though she's like clearly 20, which is not okay. I really hate when they infantilize women in these movies. But she decides she's upset. She doesn't want to go to sleep at leaving the way things are, and so she sneaks out of the house. Paul is drunk. He's flirting with Xena. She helps him up to his bed, so he lives up on the third floor. So we've got rooms on the third floor. The second floor is the pub, and the basement is the bakery. Xena kisses the very drunk Paul. Maria walks into his room and sees Xena in bed with him, but she does believe Xena's story that nothing happened. She was just helping him because he's drunk. So she takes over getting him undressed and to sleep. And Paul is upset. He's like, I've ruined everything. I shouldn't always tell the truth. I messed up dinner. But they confess their love to each other. And then we cut to Xena, who's closing up the pub. And Max arrives and says, should I walk you home? And Xena's like, nah, I'm good. So she is in the woods walking home. She sees the carriage behind her, driven by the priest. And she starts to hurry, and then the carriage starts to hurry, and it's clearly following her. So she starts to outrun, or she tries to run, but clearly she can't outrun a carriage. She trips, the carriage flies past her, and so she's relieved. She gets up, she gathers herself, watches it go, and heads back into the woods, where she encounters Dracula. He undoes her cape and mesmerizes her, and he rips off her necklace and bites her neck. Now we cut to Maria and Paul saying goodbye. We don't know what happened that night. Maybe they just talked all night. We have no idea. But while this is happening, Xena is down in the pub and she's looking in the mirror at the bite marks on her neck, and Paul comes down and she hides her bites. So later in the pub, she's got a scarf around her neck, and the priest comes in asking for a room. And Max says, we don't have any rooms to rent. And Xena's like, nope, that's not true. The room next to Paul is empty. And so Max goes, fine, you can stay a night. So Paul comes to take Priest up to show him his room. And Max says to Xena, why did you let him in here? I don't want a priest here. But that's never explained. They never explain to us why Max doesn't want a priest in his inn. I'm interested. I'm like, well, what's your deal with priests? Anyhow, so Priest asks Paul, do you know Monsignor Miller? And Paul goes, I know his niece better. And the priest kind of perks up at that. So later that night, the pub is very busy, and Priest goes down into the basement. So he's in the bakery section, and he starts moving these big bags of flour over to reveal a door. He goes through the door, and that takes him into a sub-basement, and that is where he has stashed Dracula's coffin. Xena sees the priest in the doorway of the pub. And so she says to Paul, take over as server, I'll be right back. She follows Priest down into the sub-basement to see Dracula, and she looks very thrilled to see him. And he says, I want Monsignor Miller's nurse brought to me. And she gets real upset. She's like, why do you need her? You have me. And so he slaps her and says, do what you're told. So it's the next day. Miller arrives back to his hometown of Canonsburg, and he heads into his house, and we meet Anna. Christopher Lee, I thought you were a ladies' man. I did not like that. So Xena returns to the pub. She's kind of shaken, and she tells Paul to go study and says, is Maria coming tonight? So later Maria arrives, and Xena says that Paul is downstairs in the bakery and she should go down there. So Maria goes down there, and Xena throws a bag over her head, drags her to Dracula, because she is not a girl's girl. She's not looking out for her fellow ladies. She throws Maria at Dracula. Paul goes down into the pub, and all the patrons are like, hey, did you find Maria? She was here looking for you. She went downstairs. So he runs downstairs and he calls out her name just as Dracula is trying to mesmerize her, and it sort of breaks the trance. Dracula runs, Maria faints, Xena grabs her as she's fainting, and Paul's running upstairs. So he's looking from top to bottom of this building. So finally he goes back down to the basement, and when he gets down there, he sees Maria in the corner, and she's crying and weak. Meanwhile, Dracula is very pissed at Xena and says, you must be punished. He approaches her and she screams, and then we cut. We're back in the pub. Maria is telling the men that a man with burning eyes attacked her, but she can't remember specifics. They think she fainted, that she imagined it, that she just needs to go to bed and get some sleep. But the priest is in the corner, and he's listening to her story. Priest goes down to the sub-basement, and he sees Dracula's laying in his coffin. So he goes to pick up the coffin lid to cover Dracula, and under the coffin lid is Xena. She has fangs, and she's lying on the floor, and she's either dead or she's like sleeping and she's turning and she's going to rise as a vampire. So Dracula says, destroy her. And the priest carries her out into the basement and throws her in the fire. Yeah, I did not see that coming. So then we cut to Maria, and she is waking from a dream in Paul's room. Then we cut back to the bakery, and they only show like the remains. There's like ash, and then there's like one of her shoes, and he's like pushing the last of Xena into the fire, and the priest is not doing well. He is not happy with his current position. Paul walks Maria out, and she sneaks back into her room, but her mom busts her. And so she knows that she was gone all night. Well, then Maria faints again, so Anna screams for Miller. Meanwhile, Xena is missing, so Max is mad, and he's complaining about how women are unreliable, and he's having to run this pub by himself. Meanwhile, Xena's ash in your bakery fire, my man. Paul asks the priest, can you please go check on her, make sure she's okay, and give her this note? And he says she lives with her uncle, the Monsignor. At Maria's place, Miller is bringing her soup, and she's like, I'm not hungry. Now, Dracula's out. It's nighttime. Maria's getting ready for bed. Her balcony doors are open, and she goes to close them, but Dracula is standing there. So he comes in. Clearly, he does not need to be invited. And he starts to mesmerize her again. He lays her down. She pulls her robe aside, and Dracula gives her like a little face rub, like a kitty, and then shows Fang and then descends on her. Back at the pub, Paul says to Priest, did you see Maria? And he's like, oh yeah, she's well. And later she's going to come to see you, which we're pretty sure is a lie. The next morning, Maria is not breathing well, and they think the open window is to blame, but Monsignor sees the fang marks. And remember, he's already like, he knows about vampires, but still the next night we see him like searching a bunch of old books, and I'm just like, what book do you need to read? You've already tackled Dracula. You clearly know that this is a vampire. Like, what are you reading up on? So while he's reading books, Dracula is outside Maria's room, and she opens the window to let him in. And just as he's about to feed, Miller comes in with a crucifix. So Dracula jumps through the window and Miller gives chase. But as Miller's chasing Dracula, he encounters Priest, who knocks him out. And when he comes to, he stumbles back home, and he's got a gnarly head wound. And so he's nursed by Anna, and he says to Anna, go get Paul. He loves her. He will help her, but don't go until daylight. The next morning, he tells Paul that Dracula is alive, that Paul needs to stay by Maria's side from sundown to sunrise. He gives him a book and says, you need to read this. It will tell you what to do. And Anna says to Paul, quick, go get your things, hurry, and be back here before dark. So Paul goes and packs, and he's ready to run out of the pub to his girlfriend's house. And he sees the priest, and he grabs the priest, and he's like, come with us, we need you. Oh, you picked the wrong person. So they arrive at Miller's home, and before Miller sees the priest, but before he can say anything, he dies. So that night they put garlic flowers on Maria's pillow, garlic oil on the windows and the doors, and they lay a cross on Maria. Okay, so we know the garlic thing is real, cross is real. He doesn't need invited in. We know he can mesmerize. We know he has 2 sharp canines that descend. We know he only comes out at night. We know he sleeps in a coffin. So we know a good amount about this Dracula. As they're keeping watch, Priest uses a candlestick to knock Paul out. And then he wipes the garlic off her pillows. He busts out the windows. And he goes to take the cross off of her, but he just can't do it. This is the moment where he's like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't. So Paul comes to and says, take me to Dracula. And the priest does. So they get there in the sub-basement, and Paul drives a stake through Dracula's heart, and blood starts to pour out of him. And we're like, oh, okay, movie over. Nope. Priest says, you have to pray. But neither one of them will pray, because the priest has lost his faith, like he no longer is, deserves the cloth, and Paul's an atheist. So neither one of them prays. So Dracula stands up, pulls the stake out of his heart, throws it at Paul, who runs into the bakery, shovels like burning coals out of the fire and throws it at Dracula. So Dracula runs, and he's headed straight to Maria, and he starts compelling her to come to him. Paul runs to Maria's and sees that she's in a trance. Dracula grabs Paul by the throat and throws him, and then goes for Maria and says, "Now my revenge is complete." And then we cut. Paul stumbles back to the bakery and asks Max for help. Maria is in the back of the carriage and she's rubbing her face all over Dracula's coffin. So she's not turned, but she's obviously either like entranced or mesmerized, or the turn has begun because she's already been bitten at least once that we know of. All right. Paul is on horseback and he arrives to the town from the beginning, and he runs into the pub and he says, "Someone show me to Dracula's castle." Then they hear the carriage run past. So we know that's Dracula, and they lock the door and they tell him, "No, you need to go home." And Paul says, "No, you need to tell me how to get to the castle," and no one will help him except the boy from the beginning comes out and says like this and unlocks the door and leads him to Dracula's castle. Dracula, again, way too hard on his horses, and Maria is barefoot. He just snatched her and went. He didn't get her shoes or anything. They arrive to the forest and they get off the carriage and they start walking the rest of the way. And Dracula is one of those guys that keeps his women walking like 10 feet behind him. And she's barefoot. And I do not like this at all. Not at all. He leads them to the castle, and we finally get the scene of Dracula carrying the girl. So I guess that the rocks and the getting up was just too much for her, so he does pick her up. And I was like, oh, okay, he's carrying her. No, not because he's trying to be nice, because he needs to get to the castle. Because he sets her down and says, "Take the cross off the door," and pushes her towards the door. Christopher! So she grabs it and she throws the cross over the balcony down into the cliffs below. Paul runs up. He starts fighting Dracula, and they're sort of grappling, and they both fall over the railing. Paul manages to grab a tree that's on the side of the cliff, but Dracula has fallen and he has impaled himself on the cross. So priest at this point in time comes up. He starts to pray over Dracula while Dracula tries to go for the cross, but he can't touch it. So if he can't touch it, he can't push it out of himself. So he like stands up and he pulls the cross out of the ground, but the cross is still stuck in him. So his eyes start to bleed. The priest finishes the prayer and dies just as Dracula dies. The young couple embrace. The bells toll, and we see only the bloody cross and Dracula's cape. And then Paul crosses himself because he has finally found faith and believes in God after fighting Dracula. The end. So there we go. So we have now watched Hammer's Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. I had a good time with it. So let's talk about tropes I love and tropes I hate. In the beginning, when the priests are hiking up to Dracula's castle with the cross on the back, there's like the thickest fog, and you know it's a studio, and it's like fog machines, and I'm so here for it. I love the walking through the fog. We don't see that too much anymore. It's a very classic trope. And one of these days, I just want to be in a white nightgown with a candelabra walking through the fog. I just want to do it just one time. I would love if I could do a photo shoot like that. Photographers, reach out to me. And this one is more of a horror trope than vampire, but I love the reading Latin out loud is how you loose the evil creature. It's such a good trope. I freaking love that stuff. One of my favorite times it gets used is Cabin in the Woods. Love that. Tropes I hate. I mentioned this already. I hate Saved by Faith. I hate anything where like the atheist finds faith because of his showdown with Dracula. I really, really, really hate that. There was just no need for it. Like they didn't need to end with that. They could have just ended with the cross and the cape and ended it. And it didn't matter if Paul found faith or not. I really, really didn't. I hate that. All right, let's do the ratings. How sexy or alluring is Dracula in Dracula Has Risen from the Grave? All right. The girls are definitely drawn to Dracula. So he's got some kind of allure, that's for sure. But it also may be because he's mesmerizing them. So we got to give it that. He gets his honorary vamp point, and he gets one because he is Dracula. I want to say this. I think Christopher Lee was so sexy, but this Dracula, no. He is terrible to animals. He is so rough with the women. He's slapping them and pushing them. I'm pretty sure he hates women. I'm pretty sure. So he gets 3 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure. And that's a low sexiness score for a Dracula, especially a Christopher Lee Dracula. But dude, slapping the girls and pushing them, like, do you even like women? I don't think so. And also, be nicer to animals. All right. How scary or evil is Dracula? And Dracula has risen from the grave. See, I'm wearing my Dracula shirt. The Blatzepish. All right. He is very hard to kill. The guy stands up, pulls a stake out of his chest, and throws it, which is amazing. He got his minion to drag a coffin and then dump a corpse out and just left it on the side of the road so that he had a place to sleep. He did all of this. He killed Miller, abused and killed Xena, threw her in a fire, turns a priest into like a groveling piece of nothing, and goes after Maria, all out of revenge because Miller put a cross on his door. That's it. The tiniest slight, and he has done this to all of these people. And let's not forget that he threw Xena. He made the priest throw the woman in the fire because she couldn't keep Paul away when Dracula was trying to mesmerize Maria. That was the tiniest little slight. And he's like, burn her. Holy cow. Also, he's really, really mean to his horses. I don't like it. And so we're giving him 9 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. He only loses a point because he is bound by the sun and crosses do work on him. But short of that, like, bad dude. What a bad Dracula. Not romantic at all. My thoughts. All right, come on. Dracula and Hammer films are like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, Hammer did so many vampire films, so you cannot negate what they did for Dracula, for vampires, and for horror. Now, Vampire Circus is still my favorite of all the Hammer films, but I thought this was fun. It was different, and we got to give them a shout out that I did not see a lot of this coming. I thought I had it all figured out. And it is very rare that I get surprised. Like, I did not foresee Xena being thrown in a fire. That I did not see that coming. It is hard to churn Dracula movies out like one after the other. There's a formula to these movies. I did really miss Peter Cushing because him and Christopher Lee together is just like such magic. But I had a good time with this one. I enjoyed it. And I'll tell you, like, if you've never seen it, I think it's worth a watch. I really, really do. Now, next week, we're going to do one that is so special. Not only am I bringing it back to the podcast, because I did it when I was audio only, my very first year when I was on Spotify, had no idea what I was doing. But we're actually doing the very first movie to ever be on this podcast. It's my pilot episode, and it's the 1995 Alyssa Milano vampire movie. It's called Embrace of the Vampire. Now there's 2. One is from like the 2000s. You want the one from 1995 with Alyssa Milano. It is available, I think, on Tubi. You have to watch it if you've never seen it. Not around children, by the way. Watch it by yourself or another adult. And then come back next week as we talk about this movie, as I revisit it. Let's see if my thoughts have changed from 5 years ago. Probably not. I know this movie so well, but I'm excited to go back, and I'm excited to bring it to YouTube. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to share, we'll just say, but I am going to bring it to you guys so you can watch it with me. In the meantime, I hope that you guys are happy. I hope you're healthy. I hope your bellies are full and you feel loved. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish. Thank you.